Do you have an itchy pet? Maybe you have an itchy dog or a cat. It's springtime here in beautiful Colorado, and unfortunately, spring a lot of times brings itchy pets, allergies, chewing at the paws, ear infections, anal gland problems, hot spots, all those horrible things that are so stressful, so expensive, and it's awful just watching our pets not feel good. So, this is what we're talking about today. We're going to be talking about how to manage your pet's allergies naturally from a different perspective. So, if you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. I'm Dr. Katie Woodley, the natural pet doctor, and I'm on a mission to make sure you, as the amazing pet parent that you are, feel empowered, supported, and confident that you're on the right path with your pets, with your dogs and your cats, implementing fresh food diets, nutrition, food therapy, holistic medicine, herbs, Western, Chinese, essential oils, which we're going to be talking a little bit about today too, because there's so many different ways to approach health. There's so many tools in the toolbox, but who here feels stuck or frustrated that your pet has these symptoms maybe, and you might be going back and forth to the vet clinic and it's not working? Very, very common. Anyone here dealing with allergies currently with their dogs or their cats? Definitely. I see you, Kim. Hot spots, you know, they are a problem, and the problem is that a lot of times we get stuck in this hamster wheel of going back and forth to the vet for this problem. And the problem is that we go to the vet, we get Apoquel, we get Cytopoint, and the symptoms disappear and we start feeling like we fixed the actual problem, but in reality we miss the root cause for why those symptoms were there in the first place. So if you're new here, welcome. I like asking the question why a lot. I feel like that's commonly missed in the human realm, in the vet realm, where we're just treating symptoms. We're using a supplement, or we're using an herb, or we're using a medication, and we forgot to take that step back and look at, well, why did that symptom occur in the first place? So let's dive a bit into what are allergies. And the allergy is essentially something where there's something that's aggravating, irritating the immune system. It's seen as a foreign thing, and it's creating the symptom of itchiness, irritation, inflammation. So it could be a number of things, right? When we think about, well, what can aggravate the immune system? And a lot of times we'll, as a veterinarian, we break it down into three categories. We have environmental sensitivities or allergies, so grasses, pollens, trees. Those tend to be seasonal. So springtime's here. A lot of pets are going to start scratching and itching and chewing because they're sensitive to something in the environment. There's also food sensitivities. Food allergies are very different. They're stimulating different parts of the immune system, producing different immunoglobulins. Food allergies are very rare in pets, but food sensitivities are actually quite common because I talk a lot about leaky gut and gut health and the microbiome. Definitely check out our previous YouTube videos on that. We have a lot of blog posts on that also. And so what happens is we get this inflamed gut lining, and then the foods that we're feeding our pets become sensitive to, because those protein particles, those foods are leaking through that gut lining that should be nice and tight, but it's inflamed. It's separating those tight junctions. We've got food going into the bloodstream, aggravating, irritating the immune system because it goes, that's foreign, that shouldn't be here, and it mounts an immune response. So the reason that this is commonly missed is because we're focused on the symptom of the skin, the itchiness, the ear infections, and we didn't realize that it actually originated in the gut in the first place. And so this is commonly missed. So it's something to keep in mind. Food sensitivities are common, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper and test kind of the traditional knowledge, because food sensitivities, we think it's a root cause, but it's not. So hold on to that little thought, this little nugget for Friday morning. Now, the other big part of itchiness, or what we call allergies, are going to be due to parasites. So your flea allergies. Oh my gosh, who is dealing with fleas right now? They are coming back in full force. Mites can also be an issue too. So if you're having your pet, they're like getting all scabby and irritated, your vet needs to be ruling those out and doing skin scrapes to make sure that we're not dealing with a mite. Demodex mites, Sarcoptes mites, we can get that from wildlife. So if you live in like Colorado and you have coyotes and foxes that roam through the yard, they can actually drop these mites and our pets can pick them up. And those are really, really, really itchy pets. They get chronic issues. They get like, they lose all their hair. So a lot of times when you see like these puppies, these rescued puppies, and they've lost like all their hair, they're all scabby, that's usually a Demodex mite. We want to rule those out. We do that with a skin scraping at the vet clinic. Very important to rule out because you can get stuck trying all these different things if we haven't identified what is actually creating the problem. So let's go a little bit more into, okay, well, we have these three categories, but that's not it. That's not all there is to it. It's not about the hydrolyzed prescription food diets. It's not about, allergy serums. Yes, they can play a part. It's not about the steroids suppressing the immune system. We need to take it a step further and we need to look also at, are there toxins? How is our pet dealing with inflammation? Because if we're putting foods into our pets that have a lot of chemicals, artificial colorings, they're feed grade, not food grade. Feed grade means that we as humans shouldn't eat it because it's essentially toxic. If we're feeding those types of foods to our pet, it's increasing inflammation in their body. And if we're increasing inflammation in the body, that can manifest as the skin symptoms and the allergy symptoms that you're seeing. So we need to be aware of the other factors surrounding us and the entire ecosystem to truly understand what are these other factors that are playing a part for increasing the itchiness and inflammation in our pets. Because this is the key that we have to unlock for true healing, healing the root cause. And it's not always one cause. It can be multiple things that have built up over years, and now the body can't handle it. And that's why we're seeing those issues. So when we want to start with first that removal, I follow like this 4R, 5R, actually, because we're going to talk a little bit about the emotional health side, which plays a part for this too, which seems completely unrelated, but it's a key component too. We don't want to miss that. But when we're following this 5R protocol, the first step is always the removal phase. And a lot of people jump straight into using things like your quercetin, which is great. We need those symptoms to go down. But we also need to, while we're treating the symptoms, providing relief to our pets, we need to be looking at what are the things that are creating the inflammation, that are aggravating the immune system in the first place, that are creating those imbalances in the body that are leading to the symptoms that we're now seeing. Because this process has been occurring before we even see symptoms. Symptoms are like the check engine light in the car, right? When we think about it, we can either ignore the check engine light and we kind of like cover it up. So when we think about, hey, well, I can take like a sticky note or a Post-it note and I can put it on my dashboard and I can pretend the check engine light's not on. And I keep driving down the road. I'm like, it's fine. It's fine. I'm not like, I don't see it. It's okay. And then all of a sudden we're on the interstate and the engine blows up because we're like, oh, there wasn't enough oil and that oil was depleting. The check engine light was like the warning sign and we ignored it. Your symptoms that you're seeing can either be ignored by putting a sticky note on it. So these are things like Apoquel, Cytopoint, steroids. It makes us think that the problem went away, but inside what it's like is like this forest fire, right? Where we have these flames burning and we put out like the trees, the things that we can see, we put out the flames in the trees and we're like, the forest fire is under control. But in reality, we forgot that under the underbrush, the fire is still burning. It's creeping along. It's creating this chronic inflammatory process that if all of a sudden another stressor comes along, a flea bites your dog, or the pollen load gets a bit higher and it pushes your pet past that threshold, that fire takes off, that inflammation takes off. This is like when we come off of the Apoquel, the Cytopoint injection runs out, and we're like, why is the allergy symptom returning? And it's because we miss these things. So I want you to be aware of, okay, start with the food, start with the treats. Are we feeding a processed food diet? And I sound like a broken like record, right, with this, but it's so commonly missed. I saw a beautiful comment on one of my posts this morning, actually, where they were like, I'm feeding, I switched from Purina and I moved to the Hill ZD diet, which is a prescription elimination diet. And she's like, because they were using in Purina your vitamin K form that's banned in humans because it's a carcinogenic product. And I thought, I love this lady. She is aware of these things. She's thinking about things. But the thing that a lot of pet parents and this lovely lady that commented on my post is missing is that those foods are feed grade. They are not human grade foods. And there is a huge difference. And as a veterinarian, I didn't realize this because we weren't really taught it in vet school. And so a lot of vets don't know this. They're doing the best that they can with the information that they have at the time. And these diets, they're coming from animals that aren't fit for human consumption. So when we think about, okay, dead, diseased, dying, discarded animals, where are they going? They're going into the pet food industry. There was actually a bill released recently that allows discarded waste material from like restaurants and from, supermarkets. And they're saying like it's helping to clean up the environment. And now it's going to go into the pet food. And I was like, that's great. I want my pet to be a garbage can. Who here wants their pet to be a garbage can? No, that is the problem with the pet food industry. So this is the problem when we are feeding processed food diets, especially if your pets have allergies, is a lot of these foods, you might see an improvement because we reduce the amount of ingredients with these prescription diets or a hydrolyzed diet. But does it actually have the ingredients to nourish and support the body and help reduce inflammation? It might be like that threshold we have to cross for symptoms, right? Maybe your pet's up here, they're on fire, they're inflamed, and that diet brings them down here. So the symptoms are more manageable, but we still have a chronic inflammatory process going on. So we need to look at the foods we're feeding. And if you can't switch over to a fresh food diet, like a raw food diet, a pre-made, lightly cooked, a freeze-dried diet, we need to get away from the dry food diets. Energetically, they're very warming, they're hot, they contain a lot of these carcinogenic byproducts, your advanced glycation end products from the way that it's processed, where it's cooked at really high heat temperatures. It's also really high in carbohydrates. In order to make a kibble, it has to be over at least 50, usually 60% carbohydrate content. Our dogs and cats have zero carb requirements. So what is that doing, especially for a pet with allergies? It's feeding the yeast. It's feeding that overgrowth that we're constantly battling, where if your dog smells like a Dorito corn chip, we know we're dealing with a secondary yeast infection because that body is so inflamed. We have a lot of moisture and yeast thrives in that. They love sugar. Carbs turn into sugar. So if we're not aware that the foods we're feeding are feeding that secondary infection, you're going to have a really hard time clearing the symptoms and healing the body. The other thing too is if you are concerned about like a food sensitivity, I find that a lot of pets, they switch over to like a lamb and oat diet. They think it's like an elimination diet. And there's this amazing concept of food therapy from Chinese medicine where every single food has an energetic. I mean, let's be real. Everything has energy. The cells we have, where I'm thinking, my thoughts, my feelings all have an energetic frequency. This desk has a frequency that it's at. You all have a frequency that you're at, but especially food. And food will directly impact and either help or inhibit the healing process. So we can look at the energetics of food where we're looking at, okay, if we're feeding chicken, if we're feeding lamb, if we're feeding venison, if we're feeding a lot of salmon for those great omega-3s, the problem is if this pet, dog or cat, is hot, itchy, inflamed, it's actually going to feed that inflammation because it's warming. These types of proteins are warming energetically. So we want to be aware of that. Now, keep in mind your kibble diets don't always distinguish all the proteins that are going in there because it's a rendered product. So remember that. We may not know what's all in there. They don't technically have to label it. And numerous people have tested those foods and found that there's different proteins that are in those diets. So keep that in mind. But if you're like, I'm sick and tired of this, I want to do an elimination diet, do an elimination diet where you're picking a protein that they've never been exposed to before, and pick a cooling protein, especially if your pet has like hot spots, itchiness, they're dealing with like they're just hot, they're panting a lot. So this would be things like your turkey, your duck, your rabbit is a really good one for a novel protein that a lot of pets tolerate really well, especially if they have GI sensitivities or irritations. Also, your cod, so your white fish is also really helpful. And then you can add in a thing like either butternut squash if you're dealing with yeast, just use some vegetables for a little bit of that fiber content. This is where your chard, your leafy greens, cooking them, adding that in and keeping it very simple for a couple weeks. Bring down that inflammation, bring down the potential of the proteins creating that food sensitivity. It will allow the gut to heal. We also want to be looking at what other inflammatory ingredients or chemicals or things are we using in the environment, because a lot of people aren't aware as we go into spring that those flea and tick products that they're using, so especially the isosazolazine family, so these are going to be things like NexGard, Brevecto, Credelio, uh, very, very toxic. They're a neurotoxin, and they're going to increase the inflammation and potentially even kill your pets. Now, I don't say that lightly, and I don't want to create fear, but unfortunately, too many pets have been harmed by these products. So if we're using that class of drugs to prevent, doesn't even prevent, to treat fleas and ticks, because they still have to be bitten by them, we need to remove that. There are so many great natural alternatives to repel that are much safer. They're safer because they're repelling, they're not an insecticide. So if you are in an area where there are a lot of fleas and ticks, we need to layer those treatments on top of one another. We need to clean up the diet potentially. We need to decrease the inflammation, because a healthy pet is a less tasty pet to fleas and ticks. So that's another huge area to be aware of. And also, too, if you're giving heartworm prevention or treatment, because it's treating the last 55 days for your pet, we need to look at what is the flavorings that are in these foods or the supplements that we're giving. Because if we're giving something and there's a flavoring and our pets have a lot of food sensitivities because their gut is leaky and dysbiotic, we need to remove those or use them less frequently. So we have a great YouTube video about heartworm prevention and natural remedies that I want. If you have not watched that and you're not familiar with the life cycle and how those medications work, make sure you go to Dr. Katie Woodley, the natural pet doctor, and watch that, because we are in the season now where a lot of people are restarting or they've been on these types of medications. And there are so many great natural alternatives, or even just being aware, I don't have to give this drug every 30 days like the drug company tells me. So if you're in an area where there is a ton of heartworm, there are better ways to utilize this drug safely to keep your pet safe. And then using other natural supplements to support those detox pathways when you do have to give a drug is key. Keep in mind, toxins, we're all exposed to them. Toxins don't mean we have to get sick from them. When we strengthen the body, we open up the detox pathways, your pet can handle so much just like yourself. That is very, very important. So keep that in mind in the removal phase. The other things too to be aware of are a lot of these pets are deficient in things like zinc or B vitamins like biotin. So what are some of those whole food sources that we can add in that are going to provide those nutrients? These are things like, we call them like superfood toppers, where we're topping the food. So even if you are feeding a kibble diet, we can still use the power of fresh food and these really nutrient dense foods to help your pet. So it's not all is not lost if you can't feed a fresh food diet. Yes, I'd like for you to move away from kibble, but I realize that a lot of pet parents can't. And that's okay. If we integrate in and we have that realization and also realistic expectations that we may not be able to resolve all the allergies, but we can keep our pets comfortable by implementing some of these things. So this is where utilizing freeze-dried organ, or you can even get like liver from grass-fed, ideally grass-finished beef, like cows, and cooking that up a little bit, or even feeding it raw. Animals can definitely tolerate raw foods. They are built for that, dogs and cats, and we can put a little bit on there to help them. So utilizing that Eggs for both dogs and cats, especially that egg yolk, is really rich in nutrients. It grows an animal. It has everything that we need in it. It is super powerful and helpful as long as your pets can tolerate it. So if you're worried about like the raw egg whites, just lightly cook the raw egg whites. So that way we're not creating an issue with the biotin absorption. But raw egg yolks are really helpful for supporting skin health and helping to provide those nutrients and those antioxidants. And excuse me. Yes, Melinda, see you in the comments. Couple good, better kibble, instead of using things like your big brands, using things like Open Farm, Carnivore. Those would be ones that you can go for. Air dried kibbles like your Ziwi would be other options too. I highly recommend getting Susan Thixton's the top 10 lists that comes out every single year for both dogs and cats. Susan Thixton at thetruthaboutpetfood.com. Check it out because she is she's looking for companies who are transparent. She does her research. She has been a huge advocate for improving the pet food industry for a very long time. So that could be a great resource for you, especially if you are in the United States. But other foods that we can use, what else can we use to heal that gut lining, support the microbiome? We know that at least 70% of the immune system is in the gut. So this is why the gut health is so important. The other thing to keep in mind too is that there is an emotional health connection. So if there's a lot of stress or your pet is kind of flighty, reactive, they're easily stressed, they're anxious, that alone can create leaky gut and allow, once again, those tight junctions separate because of the inflammation that's occurring in that gut lining. And now our pet's sensitive to all the things flowing through from the gut, all of those like exterior things, the food, the bacteria, toxins, and it's creating more inflammation and overstimulating that immune system. So keep in mind that emotional health pillar is very, very important. And that connection between the gut and the brain through that vagus nerve, through that nervous system connection is key also, and could be keeping your pet stuck with increased inflammation and those allergy symptoms. But other foods that are helpful would be things like bone broth. So keep in mind too the energetics of food. If we're using a chicken bone broth, that will be more warming. If we're using a turkey bone broth, that is more cooling. So these are great little easy things that every single person here can do on their own that don't cost you anything. It's going to provide extra glycine and collagen, support and heal that gut lining. It's going to support the joints. Glycine is also an amino acid that's essential for the detox pathways. So we're looking at how can we support the whole body because it's interconnected. The other things too is you can use things like goat milk colostrum. That's going to help provide those extra immunoglobulins that are essential for the immune system to help regulate it, calm it down. And goat milk is less reactive than cow's milk. So I always tend to go for a goat milk. Now, goat energetically is a little bit warmer, but see how your pet does, because it's not all about just all the cold things. There needs to be a balance because the digestive organ, from a Chinese medicine perspective, the spleen is what it's called, doesn't like being cold. It doesn't like being damp. So we do want a little bit of warming things, keep those digestive fires stoked and working the way that it's supposed to. We also want to make sure we're providing foods that are going to provide food sources. So we call those prebiotics to the gut, the microbes. That microbiome is essential for everything working well in the body. They're producing amino acids, neurotransmitters, things like tryptophan, your dopamine, serotonin. 90% of serotonin is produced in the gut. They're also producing B vitamins, K vitamins. Like all of these things are essential for healing your pet's body from allergies. So we want to be aware of the foods that we can feed, things like blueberries, your asparagus, broccoli, as long as they're tolerating sulfur foods. They tend to do better with either mashed up, ground, lightly cooked, especially for like your vegetables, because our dogs and our cats don't have a lot of those digestive enzymes that we do as omnivores to break down plant material. So if we can already pre-digest it for them, it'll be better at absorbing it and feeding the bacteria without creating GI upset and helping with that. So very, very helpful. Those are a couple good tips. Dandelion root, burdock root, Your sunchokes, so your Jerusalem artichokes, those are really helpful too for feeding that gut and also providing support for those detox pathways because the histamine that's being produced is being processed by the liver. So, the liver, if it's already working overtime and congested and inflamed, we need to support those pathways. And there's a lot of fresh food ways to do that. Now, some of the ways that we can support symptoms because it is awful watching itchy pets. They're not feeling good. They're scratching. Sometimes they're scratching themselves raw. They're bleeding. They're crying. It's painful. Some of the things that we can do, quercetin with bromelain, 100% give that a try. We have a great blog post too at thenaturalpetdoctor.com. If you type in allergies in the search, you'll be able to see some other natural remedies too. But quercetin is nature's Benadryl, and it will help reduce the amount of histamine naturally versus Benadryl, which can come with also side effects. Doesn't work as well. That's where these natural remedies tend to work more synergistically with the body to help improve the way it's working without creating side effects. So that is definitely something that I recommend using the power of herbs too. So nettles is really helpful. Now you can always use a nettle tea, you can use a nettle tincture, you can put down dried nettle herb organic. This is where cats, so any cat pet parent here, using the power of self-selection. If you haven't followed Julianne Thorne from Naturally Cats and her herb gardens, definitely make sure you follow her. She's a good friend, and the power of self-selection, especially with cats, is incredible. So being able to put down dried herbs and allowing your pet to self-select what their body needs is really helpful. Some of those herbs that you can use either in tincture form, tea form, or dried herbal form, and putting it down in like a little herb garden, essentially a towel with a teaspoon of dried herbs for your pet to self select, would be chamomile, fennel, yarrow. Nettles is a really good one also. And there's some great brands out there too in terms of like Animal Essentials has a great seasonal supplement, like support supplement that combines a lot of these powerful herbs all into one supplement. So you're helping to calm down that immune system, the inflammation, you're supporting the gut health, and you're healing the body essentially. But remember, we need to be removing things. Do not forget about the removal phase, removing stress as much as possible, removing inflammatory ingredients, toxins in the foods by adjusting the diets, making sure we're not feeding treats that have chemicals or ingredients that are going to increase inflammation. Make sure we're reading supplement labels. We're removing toxic products like your flea and tick products, especially those isosazolazines. Being aware of those things makes a huge difference. Your laundry detergent, if you're using some of those big brands like Tide and Gain, that alone will create an itchy pet. And that product stays in the bedding and the blankets and the clothing for at least 6 weeks. 6 weeks. So if I have an itchy like patient and they come to me and we go through the list of things that need to be removed and they're like, "Oh my God, I'm like using Gain laundry detergent." I'm like, honestly, if you can, like I would remove and replace a lot of that bedding, depending on the severity of the pet, because that is the fastest way to get it out of the house. Obviously, not everyone can do that, but we need to make sure that we are reducing those chemicals because it's keeping the body inflamed. And Valeria, thank you for mentioning this amazing book, The Aromatic Cat. And there's also The Aromatic Dog. So that's Julianne Thorne and Nayana Morag. Those are really awesome books from Amazon that I highly recommend, talking about that self-selection. We were talking about using essential oils. Yes, you can use essential oils safely with cats. Hydrosols, dried herbs, and even tea forms. So those are all things to like, you can get these from a human health store. Dried herbs, teas, hydrosols, these are human products. Make sure they're organic and we can use them with our pets. So if you're overseas and you're like, I can't access some of these supplement brands that you're recommending, no worries. You can use the power of the things that we use for ourselves. Now, one last final piece, because this is the piece that's commonly missed with so many health conditions, including allergies, is the emotional health component. Who here has an allergy pet, like an itchy pet, dog, cat? Thumbs up. I mean, it's not really a thumbs up because it's not fun. But for people here who have horrible allergies with their pets, is it stressful watching them? So it's stressful going back and forth to the vet clinic. It's expensive for one. Those drugs that are used are not cheap. And once again, like I mentioned numerous times, is that it's not treating that root cause. And so, in terms of watching this, being aware of our stress levels, being aware of the emotional health in the household, how's our pets responding to like the doorbell ringing? What do your cats do? Is there a lot of chaos? Is there a routine? These are very important things to be aware of because of that emotional health component. A lot of times we have fear that comes up and guilt that comes up, and you're like, why am I'm trying all the things, it's not working. And we have, once we become aware of that, we can do things like journaling and meditation and helping to calm ourselves. We can have a cup of tea with our pets that we're putting like the chamomile tea, lavender, valerian in their food to help them calm down also. The neat thing about that is that your pets feel your energetic frequency. They feel your stress, but they also feel your joy. They feel your love. They feel your peace. And so, if you're seeing like a lot of these elements, make sure that you're taking care of yourself too. This is something that we don't talk about a lot. And it's really, really important. And through my health journey with my husband and his autoimmune condition, my own pets, having health conditions, with seeing, working closely with so many amazing pet parents and seeing the levels of stress that are out there that no one is even aware of, or I shouldn't say no one, most people are not aware of. And that's can be inhibiting. It can be keeping you stuck. And so releasing that, but becoming aware of it is the first thing. The awareness is the key. And then doing things to help calm that down. So things like CBD are very powerful with allergies. They're not only going to help the gut health, they're going to reduce inflammation. They're a great natural anti-inflammatory, but they're working on that endocannabinoid system to rebalance and provide homeostasis again in the body. So it's calming down that stress response, that sympathetic nervous system, using those teas, those herbs, chamomile, valerian, lavender, sitting and having a cup of tea and just being grateful, like, I'm doing what I can. I appreciate all that I know, all that I'm learning, where I'm going. I appreciate this journey, even though it may be a tough one. Maybe it is a longer journey, but having and holding appreciation and love and peace for your pet and where you're at. And also, that forgiveness, right? We have a lot of guilt sometimes where we're like, I wish I had known this back then, or I wish I had done more. I promise you, you are on the right path for where you need to be. And there are so many beautiful lessons to learn from these pets that are our teachers. And allergies, whether it's allergies, cancer, autoimmune disease, IBD, gut health issues, continue on the path, but also make sure that you're giving yourself grace while you're on this journey, because that emotional health, once we unlock that and we optimize it, a lot of times that's where the healing happens, because those negative energies, those lower frequencies, I know this sounds really woo woo, but energy is key. When we release those, or we sit with them and we're aware of them so we can release them, it unlocks crazy potential for healing for both of us and our pets. So I challenge you today to just become more aware. Become more aware of the things you're surrounding yourself with, the things that you're taking in through media, social media. Is it serving a purpose, or is it potentially creating like harm? And also being aware of interpreting, like, okay, well, what am I putting in their body? What are like everything, right? And it doesn't have to be a complete massive overhaul, but it's something to be aware of, like, okay, this isn't serving its purpose anymore. I can do better. And you either finish it or you remove it. And that's how I go throughout each day, where I pick something up. I'm like, is this serving its purpose? And I have learned so much. And to be completely transparent, there are things that I've recommended in the past that I don't recommend now because of that learning journey. Every single person, every single veterinarian, every single holistic veterinarian has been exactly where you're at right now. Every single person here. And it's such a huge journey. And always measure yourself backwards, because we have ideals. And if we're not hitting it, that's where the frustration is. But we have to take that step back. It's not just about the food, it's about all these pillars of health that we need to take a look at and analyze and address and understand, so that way we can truly unlock the healing potential in your pet's body, but also for yourself. And if you're like, I'm not sure where to start, we offer online support mentorship programs through our Healthy Holistic Pet Blueprint program. We do calls to make sure it's a good fit for you. So you can always schedule a call. You can go to thenaturalpetdoctor.com, check out our free masterclass to learn a little bit more about how those pillars all work, how they work together, and where things can potentially go wrong that can lead to symptoms like allergies in the first place. But I'd love to talk to you, see if you need more support, you want to join our loving community, supportive, amazing community, not on social media, it's off of social media, and just be a part of the lifetime support system and journey that we're all on, because I'd love to help you and guide you and show you the way and learn together. So I hope you found that helpful. There is a lot with allergies. Stay tuned. Make sure you're subscribing to our newsletter. There will be a blog post coming out with some of those other supplements and natural remedies, with brands and some of the companies that I love and trust that I use too, to help as you're healing all those 5 pillars of health with your dogs and your cats. So check out the Natural Pet Doctor. Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe to us also on YouTube, so that way you can get notified every time we release new content. And we will be away next Friday because I will be traveling, but we'll be back the following Friday for our weekly coffee talk with the doc. Thank you so much for all of you. I truly appreciate each and every one of you showing up, taking time out of your beautiful morning to learn more so we can do better and help our pets live their best life. All right, everyone, take care. Have a great rest of your day.